tonight.
This is going to be a relaxed evening.
It will be very relaxed. Anthony comes in between the breaks and tells us how we do.
Sometimes he's really intense, you know. He just comes in like Mr. Hollywood.
So relax.
Actually, I'll let you run this thing. When we get going, you want to just walk around with this? I'll show you what to do. I'm going to turn it off now. Can I call you Dr. Kevin? Can I call you Dr. Kevin?
You have to call me
Well,
Kevin.
okay. How's that going? Are you getting responses?
Yeah.
Good.
We have about 100 seats.
Oops.
Say hello. Oh, hi.
We're going right now.
Smithline Beach like next week.
And good evening, folks. This is Dr. Nas, or everybody. You're tuned into The Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000. I'm joined here with my friend and co-host Larry Johnson. Larry, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. O. I understand we had a great show last week, and
you
unfortunately
missed it.
But you know what? I had it on the radio. It was great. I was on my way to this concert, but I was going to have to sing at.
Actually, it really shocked me. For those of you who are tuning in, we've been on air for about 7 months, and this is the only show in continental U.S. where a attorney and a physician are working on the same side of the bench.
And we trust each other.
Well, I don't know about that yet.
Well, you know,
Let's develop this relationship a little bit more. Well,
hey, so listen, I understand you get a lot of calls on MS.
We got a lot of calls on natural hormones.
Natural hormones,
Of course, you know, I've had some interest in this area these last 6 months, these last 6 months. The last 2 years I've done a lot of research on natural hormone therapy. And
yeah, you're on the cutting edge.
Well, you know, Dr. Aflatuni, our medical director, who's also been doing natural hormones, he's a family practitioner, he's invested in it deeply because now he's going to be doing his hormone studies in-house instead of sending them out. But we got a ton of calls during the show and probably about 30, 40 calls right after the show. So I'm going to give out a number here because many of the calls were coming from North Seattle and we don't have a physician that I know of. So if you are a physician or somebody who is doing natural hormone therapy in North King County, I'd say Snohomish, Whidbey Island, these are some of the calls that were coming in. I'd like to hear from you. Please call 800-814-9190. Again, that number, 800-814-9190. If you're interested in, of course, finding out more about natural hormones. We're talking about everything from replacement of estrogens, testosterone, and progesterone in men and women. And we're even thinking about possibly opening a longevity clinic somewhere in King County.
You know, it must be fun practicing medicine right now because so many things are happening.
There's a lot of news. I'm going to give out some numbers, Larry, real quickly here. The Medicine Man, of course, is a program where we, Larry and I, and our specialist, Dr. Kevin O'Brien, is going to be joining us very soon. We'll be talking about certain things each week. We have a specialty topic that we talk about, but seriously, you can talk about anything. Call in with your medical ideas, thoughts, and we'll give you hours. The numbers here are 206-421-1000, 887-HUSKY, or pound COMO. Now, you did an interesting thing today. You went to...
Hey, I got to tell you about this because I'm so proud. My daughter, Sarah, whose official legal name now is Sarah Danger George. Isn't that a great name?
That's like...
She won the gold.
Post-tournament win.
She won the gold today. For Western Washington University, she won the Taekwondo state championship in her category, and she's now eligible to go to the nationals. And I'm so proud of her. I've got it all on videotape.
Is she a black belt?
She's a black belt, and she just kicked ass today.
Well, I got to meet her. I got to definitely meet her.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and I'm so proud of her. So
proud of you, Sarah.
Glad I got a chance to plug that, and way to go, Western Washington University.
Again.
It's a great place. She's about ready to graduate in the plastics program there. It's a great program.
Wonderful. I'd like to, you know, I did a little bit of Taekwondo. I got my black belt when I was almost 16.
Oh,
in
you should
Shotokan.
pair the two of you off and see
Yeah,
what
that's
comes
what I said. I
out,
need to
you
really
know?
meet this young lady here.
Talking about plastics, I can't wait to ask Dr. Kevin, our guest tonight, Dr. Kevin O'Brien, about artificial hearts. We're going to talk about
We're going to talk
cardiac
about, transplants. We're going to talk about heart transplants. And without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you Dr. Kevin O'Brien, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Cardiology, University of Washington. Dr. Kevin O'Brien, welcome to the Medicine Man Show.
Thanks a lot. Awesome.
You got to put your mouth almost right next to the microphone, Doc.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's just
I'll
like
do that.
making
Now,
love to
I
the
understand, Dr. O'Brien, you've been there for about 6 years, and you are one of the team players in the transplant division.
That's right. There are four of us that are cardiologists that specialize in heart transplants and advanced congestive heart failure.
Let's start with the most realistic question. What is heart transplantation? What do you do when you're doing that?
Well, in heart transplantation, that's a therapy that we're using for people who have advanced congestive heart failure. Their heart's really at the end of the line, and they're no longer able to be supported with medical therapy. So when a donor organ becomes available, then it's harvested by a procuring surgeon and
So harvested, you mean it's actually removed physically,
It's physically
from the chest
removed.
wall,
right
from the donor,
from the donor,
and then rushed over, to
rushed
this-
in an igloo cooler to
literally,
literally to the hospital and sewn in after the recipient's heart's been
Hey, can I make a
removed.
plug
Yeah.
for something?
no,
that-
you can't make a plug.
I mean, for transplants.
Oh, yes.
It's important that you have that on your driver's license, that you're willing to be a donor, and discuss that with your family members before anything like that happens, so that they know that you're a donor, because I know that's got to be one of the toughest things you face, doctor, is getting donors.
Well, it is. Apparently,
Yeah.
it's a big issue right now because we have plateaued in the number of transplants simply because there haven't been enough donors.
That's right. In the United States, at least, the number of organ donors really plateaued since 1994. So we've
People
been-
getting stingy, you think? I mean,
Well, no, I'm not sure what all of the reasons are. I think that part of it's public education about the process, and in particular how to become, how to make sure that if you want to become an organ donor, that you can. And I'm glad, Larry, that you pointed out that just having that stamped on your driver's license actually isn't enough, because if you, God forbid, become brain dead and become a potential organ donor, then your family is asked to give consent for
Right.
donation.
So you need to
they
talk to
need
your family
know.
members.
Let the
That's right.
family
They
know
need
this is
to
what you
know.
want to do. Yeah.
short
And
of
what a wonderful
telling,
thing to do, to give life when you're losing it, you know?
well, literally, I mean,
Yeah.
short of telling the family members about your wishes, I mean, do you have to
Mhm.
write something, a will of some kind, beyond?
No, you don't. No, that's not necessary. They'll ask the family, and there's a protocol for who gets asked first, legal order
Yeah.
of who can give consent for this. But
Well,
yeah,
there's
that's
not
good.
a lot of people that are candidates for heart transplant surgery. When we come back, we would like to start off for you to tell us and our listeners who is a candidate for transplant surgery. This is Dr. O on the Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000.
Hey, that was good.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to. What's next week? Weird.
This is a Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000, and we're here joined with Larry Johnson, my co-host, and we're with Dr. Kevin O'Brien from the University of Washington. We're talking about transplant surgery, and I'm going to give out some numbers. Area code 206-421-1000, 887-HUSKY, or pound COMO. Dr. Kevin O'Brien, tell us about transplantation and its history. When did it start?
With hearts.
With hearts.
Hearts.
yeah, the first heart transplant was done in South Africa in 1967 by Dr. Christian Barnard.
Now, who will not even remember that? Because I remember the day that happened.
I do
That's right.
too.
And
It was a big deal.
It was a very large deal. It was a media event globally, and that's the day I decided to be a heart surgeon. But look what happened to me. Now, why was that a big event? I mean, he was criticized after that for having done something that a lot of other physicians apparently had tried unsuccessfully. Why did it make the headlines that day?
Well, because as you said, somebody actually did do it. Actually, Norman Shumway in Richard Lauer
Stanford.
From Stanford, had been working for several years to develop the surgical techniques for the operation. But they actually had not been able to do it because there wasn't a brain death. There was an illegal brain death policy in the United States at that time. So they.
There goes your regulation
Well,
bodies.
that's the.
It's all the fault of the lawyer.
It really is.
Oh. Well, as the coroner was.
So that
in
was
Santa Clara County.
that was 1967.
67.
And since then, it's getting more and more popular. More and more heart transplants done every year.
Well, as you alluded to, there was a flurry of activity, and several centers tried to do heart transplants in the late 60s and early 70s. The problem at that time was that we didn't have effective enough drugs to prevent rejection. So the survival rate was very dismal, very poor.
And I guess we have that now?
Well, now, in the late 70s, there was another drug called cyclosporin that was introduced, and that is much more effective than the previous drugs that were available, and so that's what's led to the proliferation of transplant programs and the ability for this to be done on a much larger scale.
Dr. O'Brien, who is, I mean, right now you've done about 26 of these from what you were telling me before the show last year, heart transplants at the University of Washington.
Yes, just last year.
And something like over 2,500 nationally in the U.S.
That's right.
And we talked about the candidates that you know get congestive failure. There's no other medical therapies available to them. Apparently, there's a lot of science that has developed in these last 5-10 years about who gets it and who doesn't, because this is an expensive procedure.
Oh, absolutely.
What does it cost?
Well, it's probably about $100,000 on average.
Not cheap.
Not cheap. And then the medications that you're required to take afterwards are very expensive as well.
I mean, the maintenance. In other words, once you've had the transplant.
That's right. Yeah, you actually have to take 3 drugs to prevent rejection for most of your life, the rest of your life, really.
This is the Medicine Man. We're talking to Dr. O'Brien about transplant surgery of the heart, and I'd like to take a caller here. Key in Seattle. This is the Medicine Man. Welcome.
You're on Como, Key.
Hi.
What's your question?
That's okay. Let me give you a number. I don't know if you got it at the head of the hour. You didn't. I'll give you the number again. The number is 800-814-9190. There are about 4 physicians in that practice in South King County that specialize in the treatment of female and male hormone regulation, and they use natural hormones. These natural hormones are derived from either yam or soy. They are prescriptions. All right, there are actually prescriptions that a medical doctor has to write for you. So I advise you to, again, call that number, 800-814-9190, and get some more information. And in fact, there's been such a flurry of interest in this area, I will be doing a seminar on April 26th at the Doubletree Hotel in Bellevue, 26th of April. Doubletree Hotel in Bellevue, and that starts from 6 and goes 3 hours, and a whole hour of that seminar will be dedicated to natural hormone therapy.
Now, how about the first part of her question, dealing with the heart thing?
She talked about DHEA and melatonin, and my response to her is if she wants to do natural therapy, is to actually stop those, get the levels of the serums of the testosterone, progesterone, and the estrogens, and then go on those.
Let me ask the doctor a question. I like to ask the question. Who decides who gets the hearts that are available? I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, who plays God here?
Well, that's a very important question, and there's been developed a very strict set of guidelines for who's listed, what the criteria are for being listed for heart transplantation.
Did you mention just a couple of those criteria?
Sure.
Well, first of all, you have, at least in the case of the heart, there are some tests that have been developed over the last few years that help us define pretty reliably who has a good chance of surviving. They're doing well enough. If they do well enough on that test, they have a good chance of surviving for a year without a heart transplant. But if they do poorly, then the chances chances of survival are poor without a heart transplant.
You've also been doing some interesting work. Now, you give it a name, actually, tailored therapy.
Tailored therapy, right.
And discuss that a little for our audience.
Well, this is a concept that was developed back in the late 80s and early 90s down at UCLA by Lynn Stevenson. And what's done is that patients with advanced heart failure are brought into the hospital. The catheter is placed into the blood vessels to measure the rate of blood flow through the heart and measure the pressures within the heart. And then you can use that information to adjust the medications. Vasodilators and diuretics are the two major
Now, Dr.
drug
O'Brien,
classes.
I'd like to continue that discussion when we come back. Also, we're going to be talking about some of the complications of the surgery itself. This is a Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000. 67 and doing transplant of the heart. Survival rates. How good is this?
Well, in the 70s, because the immunosuppressive medications weren't as effective, in other words, rejection was a huge problem. Survival rates were only 20 to 40% in the first year. But now, in the last 6 years, the survival rate for U.S. programs has been about 82 to 85%.
So 85% of people who have their hearts transplanted live to see another birthday.
To see another birthday. And international statistics now show that the 10-year survival rate's 54%, which is that's obviously pretty good, because obviously these are people who have a 50% survival, 1-year survival.
But you got to have $100,000 or you're out of luck in the state of Washington. Is that right?
Well, the state of Washington is actually very, I think, responsible about this, and Washington State Medicaid will cover cardiac transplant if it's medically indicated.
And who determines that? Who decides medical necessity again then?
Well, they allow us to. We're hopefully the experts in determining who needs it and who doesn't.
Have you had cases like have come before you that have required them to pay? Do you recall of any?
That required the state to pay?
Yes.
Yeah, they fund a large proportion of them, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Good for us.
Yeah, it is good for the state.
I understand other states are not that great, like Idaho, maybe not so great.
Well, Idaho and Oregon actually don't, their Medicaid programs don't cover heart transplant.
What about, Dr. O'Brien, the statistics as compared to, at the University of Washington as compared to the national? Are we better? Are we average?
Well, actually, I mentioned before that the 1-year survival rate nationally is about 85%. Actually, our 10-year survival rate is about 80%.
When you meant ours means
University of Washington.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
So,
that's unbelievable.
well, we've been pretty fortunate. We have
Isn't
good surgeons
the
and
UW
hardworking
becoming
cardiologists. Yeah.
Isn't the University of Washington School of Medicine becoming a better and better known medical center? It feels like we're the center of the universe all of a sudden.
It's a very good school. One way that you can look at that is how much money's brought in for research grants, and University of Washington's been #2 in the nation for
We're so lucky to live here.
It's amazing. It's
So
not
many
just the
things.
rain that keeps
Yeah.
us here, right? It's a UW as well.
All the speakers we've got from the University of Washington.
We've been very
Wonderful.
impressed, yes. How about complications, Dr. O'Brien? Complications of the surgery itself. I mean, I know we've come a long way since 1967 and Christian Barnard in Cape Town. What are some of the, in 30 seconds or less?
Well, the surgery's pretty well worked out now, and we don't have too many problems with the surgery itself.
Okay.
With the surgery itself. Most of the complications really revolve around trying to prevent rejection after transplant. And because you have to use these powerful drugs to prevent rejection, that also makes the patient more susceptible to infections. So we have to be pretty vigilant.
Still a killer out there, infections.
That's a big problem. The infections are the major cause of death within the first 3 years after the transplant.
Now, next we're going to be hearing about, again, tailored therapy. This is something I'd like to focus on a little bit because I see congestive heart failure being sometimes mismanaged even within our clinical setting, something that we can do more aggressively before they go on to give them the option of a heart transplant. This is the Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000.
Stay tuned for more.
We're talking about heart transplants and complications. My number is here, 206-421-1000, 887 Husky, #Como. I'd like the listeners to also know that this hour of the Medicine Man has been brought to you by an educational grant from SmithKline Beecham Pharmaceutical Company, and thanks again to Joel Walker and Dan Monahan. Dr. O'Brien, quickly, we have very limited time talking about something that is fairly complex. I know that in my own practice, I've learned an intense amount of cardiology the last 5-6 years since we've been doing echocardiography in the practice. So I'm learning a lot of cardiology by force, so to speak. And I've learned that I can really push my envelope of experience by using some of these incredible medicinals available, prescription drugs available now that were not available 10 years ago, to make my congestive heart failure patient feel a little bit better and not need to go towards that transplant decision. What is the University of Washington or your practice doing to expand that area and educate other physicians? Because I figured a lot of primary care providers, general practitioners, family practitioners are almost as lost as I am in trying to figure out when do you make a referral to a cardiologist when you're plateauing, your congestive failure patient isn't getting better.
Well, we use those standard medications that really have been, whose value has been proven over the last 5 or 10 years. ACE inhibitors is an example of that type of drug. But we also have several clinical trials which my colleagues Dan Fishbein and Wayne Levy are involved with, trying new medications that may provide additional benefit to these patients. With regard to referral to a cardiologist, I think it depends on how the patient's doing. If they're not doing well, then that's
Ship them over.
That's a sensible thing to do.
How about things that are not prescription drugs but seem to be popular now? I mean, I've read a couple articles about COQ10.
I was going to get to that. I was going to go to Pearl and Puyallup, and then we'll
let's
get
talk
to
to Pearl.
all of the vitamins, and there's a whole array of those. Let's go to Pearl and Puyallup. This is a medicine man on Como News Talk.
Pearl, you're on.
Hi, Pearl. I did. Tell me about it. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. I'll take that, Pearl.
Pearls of wisdom.
Yes, I love it. You're listening.
Pearls of wisdom.
I can't get one by you then, huh?
If your feet stink, sink. I hated that part, Pearl. It always fell off. My license needed an organ transplant. God bless him.
Great. Pearl, thanks a lot for calling the medicine man.
You know, I wonder how many people are out there paranoid, figuring there might be, they won't get the medical treatment they need if someone sees that they're an organ donor on their license.
Well, I wasn't until just recently, so, this is a perfect show to talk about, going out there and actually making that decision and making it happen. Larry, you brought up a good topic. You talked about natural supplements, foods, vitamins.
Well, you hear a lot about these things, especially I heard about the COQ10 thing. It kind of sharpens your personality.
Coenzyme Q10 has been around in Japan for the last 20 years. My understanding, Dr. O'Brien, is that CoQ10 is the #1 prescription seller in Japan. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not.
I didn't know that.
But you can buy it off the shelf.
You can here. It's an over-the-counter product here, but I'm talking 15 years ago when I started doing medicine in this state. I learned about it from Japanese literature, and right now there's not only just supplements, there's a lot of apparently double-blind studies done on CoQ10 as a food supplement to assist in the heart muscle functioning a little bit better. And empirically, that means just my own observations, the last 10 years where I've been using this, my congestive failure patients that take CoQ10 don't see me as often with the complications of
You have an
congestive
experience
failure.
with it, Doctor?
No, we're generally trying to stick with medications that we can demonstrate clearly in trials and demonstrate clearly with, with hemodynamic monitoring, measuring the pressures in the heart and the rate of blood flow through the heart. Using those medications that we can demonstrate really make a difference. And so I think that while these natural therapies have some appeal, I think that for the most part, I prefer to be putting people on medications that you know for sure work.
We're talking to Dr. O'Brien and my co-host Larry Johnson about transplant surgery of the heart. When we come back, we're going to talk about other choices that you have outside of going to a cardiac surgery. This is the Medicine Man on Como News Talk 1000.
Could you use a burst of energy?
Does it actually qualify for transplant surgery of the heart, but can't get one? What do these folks do while they're waiting to receive the donated heart?
Well, Larry had asked about this before. This concept of tailored therapy or aggressive medical therapy means that the majority of patients who were referred for a heart transplant evaluation can actually be tuned up, feel better, reach a physiological point where they're likely to live longer with medical therapy at that point than with a heart transplant. So then they can be carried along on medical therapy for a period of time until their condition deteriorates and we have to consider transplantation.
And then moving on into those individuals that you have qualified now for receiving a heart, and but there's no heart.
Yeah, that's obviously the big problem. We talked earlier about how the number of donor organs available is really limited, and about 20% of people who are on the cardiac transplant list die every year because organs aren't available. So,
Well, let me ask you something which may be out of sequence here if we have one. You talked off the air about a pump that's out there.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated by
the
what
assist
that is.
pump. Tell us about the
What is
left
that?
ventricular assist pump.
yeah, the left ventricular assist device is a new mechanical pump that we've been using at the university for the last year and a half, which we can put people on who've reached the end of medical therapy. They've reached the limit of medical therapy and they die without something else.
Now I remember that last time I heard about these left ventricular assist pumps, you went to the hospital, took this mechanical device, they attached it to the left ventricle, which is one of the toughest, pumping chambers, and then you had to live in the hospital until your donor was available. Now apparently you can mobilize these patients with a battery pack.
Right. The type that we've been putting in is implanted in, the pump is put in underneath the skin in the abdomen, but it's hooked to a big shopping cart sized console that the patient
And you can
has
go
to
shopping
push
to
around.
Nordstrom's.
Well, those patients, have to stay in the hospital, but there's a newer model that's almost completely implanted and is powered by battery packs.
How many hours on the battery?
Oh, 6 to 8. And
Well enough for a shopping trip to Nordstrom's.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
So this is the beginning of maybe a new era in terms of probably coming up with something artificial that will bridge the gap between nothing and having a transplant.
Well, right, and so that's what the goal of this is to put one in so that people can wait outside of the hospital for a transplant. But we're also one of 20 centers in the country who are going to be involved in a trial of medical therapy versus this portable pump in patients who aren't heart transplant candidates. So looking at this as a destination.
Next destination.
Yeah.
Let's go to James, who's in his car in Fife. James, welcome to the Medicine Man.
Hi, James. You're on Como.
Great. You mean right here in the studio tonight? Not in the studio tonight.
Maybe I could use a couple of transplants from some monkeys.
Dr. O'Brien, are we doing cardiac experiments with animals still in our pathophysiology labs?
Yeah, we're not doing those here, but the term that's used is xenotransplantation for using an animal organ that's transplanted into a human. But there are...
Baboons was the big last thing that I remember.
Right, baboons. It looks like pigs are probably going to be the...
Better.
Yeah, they're going to be the source
Well,
of the future.
we've been using their valves for over 15 years now.
Right, that's right. Well, one of the reasons is that pigs, the size of pigs' hearts is a pretty close match to humans. But there are programs that are working on ways to genetically engineer the pig hearts so that they won't reject.
So we're seeing our future is many more porcine hearts.
You know, judging
Well,
by
maybe.
Congress, I'd say there have been a lot of pig brain transplants.
All right.
Yeah.
But seriously, are we going to see more? Because I know the arena of valve therapy has been using many more big valves the last 10 years.
Well, the big problem with these animal hearts is that the rejection response to them is much more powerful, much more profound.
Hey, can I ask you this before
before you go on, because we got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the future of transplant surgery. This is the Medicine Man on Cone News Talk 1000.
We all got questions.
I know, sorry. She's killing me back there.
Okay, everyone say
What's your
hello.
question? Go ahead.
I just want to ask whether old hearts, young hearts, makes
All
a
right,
difference.
go with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got a CoQ question here, and ELS.
What's it say on the monitor? What's the question?
It says CoQ10 and ELS.
Oh, that's. I bet you I know what that is. It's ALS. Probably my
ALS,
sister.
Okay.
Is it?
Probably my sister
Well,
calls.
you know, I'm on the
Susan, yeah.
She calls. She's a regular. That's my sister.
But I could call you back.
It's your sister, huh?
Yeah.
For sure?
Yeah. I was supposed to show you an article about carotene and.
Beta-carotene. And,
No, it's the L-carotene. It's
no, L-carnitine.
carnitine.
I've been using that for years.
Yeah. Well, apparently it's just been recently hawked as some breakthrough for ALS.
Yeah. Did you see number 6? It's on there.
Yeah.
Sure?
No, that's why I brought it up.
Oh.
I saw it on the sheet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. L-carnitine is an enzyme. It's an amino acid.
But apparently the interaction of that plus CoQ10 has done something.
I'll take Susan's call.
Okay.
Well, buying our first home started out nothing at all like that, and ended up everything we hoped for. We went through.
You can have more of those if you want.
At the mortgage company.
There's no rule against it.
It's scary to be going out on a limb in the first place, and then.
I'm going to be going out in 8 minutes. Actually, 7
It
and a half
sounds
minutes.
to me
I'll
like
get
the
back.
actual procedure of the heart transplant is not as dangerous as people's susceptibility to infection by not taking those chemicals right.
Yeah, well,
It's
or
the
even-
post-operative stuff that's the hard part.
Yeah,
Sounds to me.
and even if you're taking the chemicals, I mean, I maybe sort of downplayed the risk of the surgery a little bit. I mean, it's a 5 to 10% risk of dying of the operation.
It's still a pretty acceptable risk for most people.
Yeah, and particularly when people are at the point where they're at. If they're on the list, that's definitely better odds than the alternative. So.
People, they're all different. That's why
It's not Congressman.
Custom Choice, an innovative phone package that lets you choose from 17 features, including your phone line, for one low price.
Susan is going in and out. I don't know where she is now.
Custom winning.
Maybe she's shy, huh?
Priority call and more.
Oh, she's not too shy.
You might choose call rejection.
So she's not on right now.
Okay.
So,
Speed calling. And caller ID.
of our show, what do you see in the future of transplant heart surgery?
Well, I think the big issues are going to be whether we can develop new medications that are more effective at preventing rejection without the complications that current ones have. And then also, I think it'll be very interesting to see how the use of these heart pumps pans out, because that's
So
a therapy, obviously.
if you had to characterize, 20 years from now,
Yeah.
I want you to become a futurist here for a second. Do you see a lot less surgery and a lot more medical intervention? In other words, pushing the envelope even further, as we've seen the last decade?
Well, hopefully we'll have more effective medications. I mean, that's been the history
Of-
over the
of-
last, particularly over the last 10 years in this field. The medications have been developed that are much more effective. However, I think the technology, on the technology side of it, people have made pretty significant advances.
Absolutely.
And so that may really become a viable alternative to transplantation itself.
Now, let me ask you a here and now question. If you're going to get a heart, does it matter whether it's a young heart or an old heart, or are there other criteria, assuming that is important, or are there other criteria even more important?
Well, the main criteria is how it's working. So we get echocardiograms on the heart before we make a decision about whether or not to use it. And then with regard to age, I think the most important thing is whether or not